Okay. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Gonzalez. I'm here with my mom, uh, Deborah Gonzalez, and here for the Preparing for Your Death portfolio interview. So, what we're going to be talking about today, if this is my mom, Deborah Gonzalez, and we'll go over the three main parts that are the advanced directive, and then the section two, talking about the different preferences for death, and then finally the preparing for your death UCLA personal checklist. And I'll go through all those things and tell you what all of those things mean. But yeah. So the main idea that we're talking about in this assignment is like what you prefer to be the good death, I guess. Um, say if I, am in an accident or if I get a disease or something, right? And I have a choice about what to do. Then it's just about kind of deciding what that choice is beforehand because it'll be usually pretty hard to make it in the moment. So yeah, that's just kind of the main goal. Um, for me, what that like I guess what the idea of like a good death is just you know, things being peaceful, things not being too like I guess dramatic or stuff like that. Being able to, you know, work with other people. It's not too rigid of a thing. So stuff like that. Um, my greatest hopes and fears, mostly just hoping that, it's not, it's just like a gradual, genuine thing. I don't want to have people flying halfway across the country or anything, right? Or just going through difficult stuff when they're already having to deal with that. So I just want to make it kind of easy on the different people. And yeah, values wise, I kind of would like prefer just like comfort because it's kind of like a thing that's just happening, right? And there's not really too much I can change about it. So I would prefer kind of comfort and being around as long as I'm myself, like um not being around in a state when I'm like not mentally, you know, very cognizant or capable, right? Ah, buddy. Um, okay, all right, so we can get started with the advanced directive. So let me go ahead and share this with you. You may not be able to read it, but that way I can at least have it set up. Okay. How is that coming through on your side? Is it one thing or is it like this half and half page?
It looks like it's one whole page.
Okay. Okay. So this is the planning checklist. This is the advanced directive, right? So it's just talking about it's goes through a bunch of different forms inside of it, but it's mostly talking about your preferences during the time. So for me, a lot of my preferences are about letting things happen naturally, right? Because if I'm already in that kind of state, then it's like, okay, well, you can even see that living as long as possible, regardless of quality of life, that's like not important to me at all, right? I'm not opposed to um intervention stuff, but just so long as there's like a good quality of life present there and that doesn't compromise it all that much. So that's kind of my main priority and that you'll see that throughout. But reasonable about like what will be important to me whenever I'm going through that process. I would like, for people to be present um as reasonably available. So like without requiring significant or like not um financial or logistical or emotional costs that they're not able to do. So if they're just not able to do it, then that's okay. I don't want them to have to go through something that they're not, ready for. Um, in some of the different measures that you might face, like terminal illness or a coma or a chronic illness or dementia, some of these are not like a definite, uh, like for example, like a permanent coma. Like that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be, or well, maybe it does. Um, doesn't mean that you'll necessarily be in it forever, but if there's a significant likelihood that I would be in it forever, or that if I did come out of it and I wouldn't um, be able to be like mentally there, then I may not want that to happen, right? If I have a terminal illness, right, it would be that the initial stages I would want, measures just for comfort in general, because if I can't take it back, then just be initially comfortable. But if it looks like I'm starting to kind of really go away, then just let that gradually happen. Um, Dementia, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, about do I have any strong feelings about any particular medical procedure? Not really. I think the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is the mechanical breathing, the respirator. But as far as I know, it's just mainly that you're pretty uncomfortable during that time. But I'm willing to be uncomfortable if there's a likelihood that I'll still be happy and healthy afterwards. Uh, so that's kind of a big thing. Any like physical or mental conditions afterwards that would might possibly influence some of the decisions that I made here would be like the likelihood of quadriplegia. If I can't move, right? Kind of moving is kind of an important thing to me. And if I can't physically do that anymore, then that might change some of my decisions. Um, but mentally, loss of cognitive capability, or loss of long and short-term memory. For the most part, that mostly just looks like if it's a vegetative state, right? That may be something that okay, maybe I don't really want to. That may prompt reconsideration of some of my choices. And you can see that further in this one where it says uh, that I would want to be placed in a nursing home or a facility if I'm unable to do at least three of these things. Feeding myself, bathing myself, going to the bathroom by myself and dressing myself. Like if it gets to the point to where I can't do three of those things, three out of the four of those things, then I would probably want to go to a nursing home because I know that it's really taxing on whoever is helping you out with that. So, if it's financially available, then I would probably prefer to do that, just so that, you know, the moments that I do have with my family outside of my condition are, like good moments, or at least moments not like very heavily burdened by my condition. Similarly, if I'm angry or violent and I'm not able to be controlled by medicine, then yeah, I probably wouldn't want to be living at home with family. I might, probably be better at a facility, just so that the few moments that I do have with family that they're good moments, right? This is one thing. It's kind of an extension of that same idea. Is that in my last, if I say I have like a last few final months, right? I would probably want, if I had a general choice, if I was like financially available, I would probably want to live in an assisted facility or a hospice center. Um, for the same reason that that way, the few moments that I am able to have, together with friends and family during that last time is not as burdened by like my condition. Because I know, of course, my friends and my family like spending time with me for the most part. But but you do ultimately kind of get burdened down by the condition. And that's something that I kind of want to limit as much as possible. Not, not to distance myself away from you guys, but to make it, kind of easier on you guys and stuff like that. And to make it, still a good experience. So that's one thing that I would prefer. Now, about, making decisions about my treatment in the moment. If available, I would prefer to. Like if I'm cognizant, if I'm capable, if it's not an immediate emergency, yeah, I'd like to be as involved as possible. The thing is, though, I know that's not always practical. I know sometimes doctors have to make immediate choices to, keep people alive. So if that is the case, I would give, preference to the doctor or preference to, whoever the trauma surgeon, whoever is working with me, um, to make sure that I'm still alive, right? Um, Also, if I'm not, able to mentally be there and understand what's going on and the different procedures that they're suggesting or talking about, then I would give preference probably to, like a family member who understands, these directives and like the general attitude of them and stuff like that. Um, I would always want to know the truth about my condition, as regardless of however difficult it may be. Just because, it's it's important to know, like the reality of the situation and what have you. And obviously you can get like second opinions, but I would never really want to like limit the idea. I would never want to limit the availability of it. Um, and as an extension, I would always want to share that information with you guys so that everyone is on the same page about, where things are going and what things are looking like. All right, so this one particular wishes for therapies that could sustain life. Basically, this is, um, antibiotics, dialysis, ventilation, uh, CPR, uh, feeding tubes, IVs, all that kind of stuff. For the most part, I'm pretty okay with all of them. Again, I'm willing to go, through discomfort if it's likely that the outcome is, I'm back to my normal, happy, healthy self. So I'm okay with that. Um, Now this is a section about dementia, basically talking about um, the different kinds of care that you would want depending on your status, right? So if I've forgotten everything about myself, but I still, recognize friends and family, I want to live as long as possible. Um, if I can no longer really remember events or people, but I'm still, generally I seem pretty fine, then like if I'm still emotionally pretty okay, then I would, still want to live as long as possible. Um, the thing that starts to change is that if I start to generally seem anxious or if um, if I'm anxious or violent or angry, and if those things aren't able to be controlled with medicine, then I would probably want to, be able to keep me alive and stuff, but probably prevent, other forms of sustainment. One thing here, I can no longer communicate with my loved ones through words. That one is like a little bit broad, right? Because you may not be able to physically speak, but you may still mentally be there, And if that's the case, then, being, you know, physically available, being, able to talk is an important thing to me. But um, I do think that there are like other ways that you can live, right, where those things aren't quite as active. So I wouldn't, necessarily want to. uh, start to making choices to kind of go away, but I wouldn't want like the full range of care, I guess. When it starts to get to other things like I can no longer feed or bathe or toilet myself, um, different things where you're taking care of yourself, those are kind of things that, if it's one out of those things, then that's just one thing. But if it starts to get like two or three or four of those things all at once, then I would probably my main concern is not reaching a vegetative state, right? So if it starts to seem that I'm, increasingly gaining uh, these conditions, then I may want to start, avoiding treatment for other diseases or things like that. The only option for me is in a nursing home. Again, it's also broad, right? It may be practicality or it may be indicative of the condition. But if it's practicality, then yeah, I would want to live as long as possible. But if it is a condition, then I would want to prevent disease, or I wouldn't want to prevent any other possible disease. But um, for the most part, there are no conditions wherein, well, unless I'm violent or angry and not able to be controlled with medicine. That's the only case in which I would want food and water withheld, to where, pretty quickly I would probably pass away. But that's kind of an extreme condition. Um, there are really no other condition. There's really not a lot of conditions other than that where I would want like kind of an immediate action in that case.
Okay.
For the most part, or some of the remaining documents are just talking about, um, my preferences of healthcare and expressing those to my current, you know, doctors or where have you. My preferences for medical facilities. One of which is the uh, Memorial Hermann Center in the Woodlands because I'm a big fan of that place. And this last one, hospital visitation authorization. Um, Basically that you guys, my immediate family, you, dad, and Ariana, that they would have, first first access and first informing of if I'm, in the hospital or if I have a medical condition or what have you. You guys will be like the first that I'll talk about. But yeah, that's the first part, talking about all of these, medical directives and all of these choices and what have you. So for the most part, some of the general themes are just uh, okay with um, temporary uncomfortability as long as it's likely that, it would be a continued well-being of life. But if I'm maybe, mentally not there, and if I'm also not there and seeming to be upset or even violent, then that may be things where I may start to choose towards an intended decline. But yeah, that's for the most part kind of the general idea of this form. So, is there any thoughts about that?
No, this is just a very hard topic for me to discuss right now because of the fact of our current situations with family members and such as myself, and also family members that are actively going through some of these things. So I feel that I'm very quiet when it comes to something I would normally talk a lot about. But like I said, again, it's very, very difficult for me at this point, given that I'm just recovering from a stroke myself. And, thinking of how I would answer these questions is very challenging for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, obviously, you're my mom, and you sound like these are really difficult questions without any further context. But yeah, um, yeah. Well, either way, thank you for being willing to go over them with me. I know it's pretty
But
hard.
I mean, is there anything specifically that you need to ask me about
No,
anyone particular? Because again, in just an overall general aspect, they're very hard for me to kind of absorb. But I can answer any specific ones if need be.
yeah. No, I think it's fine. I just kind of a lot of this project is kind of getting your idea, um, seeing if maybe you have any different values from like as you hear some of my choices and you kind of pick up on the values that
Yeah, no, I think I'm in total agreement with all of the responses that you've given. Um, I don't think I would do anything differently.
yeah. Yeah. That is I think, the general theme is just that, if there's a likelihood that, life is going to continue and I'll still probably be my same general self, then I'm willing to, go through initial uncomfort and stuff like that. It's just that if it's a, conclusion that you have an illness or you have something that isn't gonna, get better, then it's about, initial comfort. And then if it seems like the quality of life just isn't there anymore, again, there's very few circumstances where I would immediately decide to go out, right? But I
I think
probably would.
I'm sorry, I
No, go
think
ahead.
given my religious beliefs, however,
Hmm.
I feel that miracles can happen and it would be very hard for me to decide that a miracle will not happen or a miracle, the likelihood of them. I mean, I understood the likelihoods of miracles are not as great as we all would hope,
Hmm.
but it would be very hard for me to say absolutely there will not be a miracle that happens that would change anything unless given a situation where, your arm as a, I mean, something as graphic is, your head is severed from your body, to where obviously a miracle's not going to happen to where your head just reattaches itself to your body or anything like that. But if it's illness prognosis, things can happen
Hmm.
when we don't have control over it. God can always come in and redirect our outcomes. Again, like I said, aside from, your head's barely hanging onto your body, then obviously, that's a given. But, it would be very hard for me to make a decision that you would not recover from heart failure or something. You never know what could change in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Those are some things that would be very hard for me to decide. But aside from that, I believe I would make the same decisions as yourself.
Yeah, and I was trying to take that in consideration whenever making these choices, because, you know, um, the medical institution isn't infallible, right? So I don't know. I think it was a little difficult to find a balance between making my own choices and still being open to, miracles or, you know, miraculous things happening outside of my control.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of hard to have both this, you know, concrete decision alongside being open in that way. Um, but I kind of tried to relay it in my choices. So,
Right.
okay, this is the second section. We only have about 10 more minutes, so I'm gonna try and go through them relatively fast. But um, actually, let me go through this first. So this is our second section. It's talking about, the different preferences that you would have. This is somewhat, there are some different sections within this. So do you want to enter a hospice? Again, I would prefer um, a, sorry, I'm just going through these a little bit with you. But yeah, I would probably prefer if, my condition calls for it. Hospice. Probably not hospice at home, probably a facility. Again, if it's financially available, because that's kind of a difficult thing too. But yeah, if the main thing is that I just don't want, I think a lot of this is not also concrete decisions, but just general themes to work within. And that the general theme in this is that I just want the last moments that I have with the family to not be burdened by whatever condition I'm going through. And if that requires hospice, um, to where, I have to where, you have people who are there and paid to take care of you, then I can not put that burden on you guys as the family, and you guys can come by and visit and stuff like that, and not have to be burdened with the logistics of it as much as just getting to, spend time. I know it's not entirely a burden, right? But I do know that after a certain amount of time, even though, of course, you love me and everything like that, it still does get difficult, right? So I kind of want to find a balance between there. Um, One thing is this next one is disposal, right? So once I do eventually go, um, my hope, and I talked with you a little bit about this earlier this year, is donation, right? So especially if I die young, my hope is that I could, donate as much as myself to other people as possible so that they can, use use those parts of myself and be more whole themselves. So that's kind of my same general idea. But if that's not possible or anything, my main concern with disposal is just practicality and financial availability. I think that's why sometimes, as we've discussed this throughout the last few years, it's just like simple stuff like being buried under a tree or what have you. Um, I just don't want it to be a very expensive thing, because the people can be almost bankrupt, a lot from these kind of proceedings. And I just wouldn't want to burden folks with that, right? So that's why I kind of say simple things like, uh, land burials or stuff like that, like personal plots and stuff like that. It would be hopefully my preference that financially I'm able to pay for whatever happens beforehand. Uh, and hopefully it wouldn't be a very expensive affair, and then I'd really be able to do it. Um, as for my remaining finances or my possessions, I would probably defer to like immediate family members and stuff like that. I know obviously as I get older, and have different experiences, with family members and stuff, it might change, right? But for the most part, it would probably be somewhat of like a traditional idea. Like if I'm still not married, then it would probably be, uh, executed by you and dad, right? Or if I am married, then it would probably be by my spouse. But yeah, and that extends to subsequent responsibilities like cleaning out my house or my personal possessions and stuff like that. Um, that would probably be, you know, to my partner, or if I'm not, there yet, then, as available to you guys. I know obviously you're gonna have a lot of things if that is ever the case, and hopefully it's not, right? But if it is ever the case, you guys would have a million things going on, plus, your own emotions to contend with. So take it as much time as you need, right? If I'm still in the RV, if you need to let the RV collect dust for a little while before you're able to come in and go through that, then that's okay, right? Um, Pets or dependents like children, things like that. Um, Obviously I wouldn't have children until I was married. Um, and whether or not I'm still in that marriage or not, I would imagine that the children would go with the parent, um, unless there are extenuating circumstances like abuse or things like that happening. Where if that's the case, I'm unsure about where they would go for the time being, but probably with immediate family. Um, if I had pets like Buddy, um, would probably go with immediate family like you guys or a spouse if applicable. Um, and sentimental value items like yearbooks or personal collections and things like that would probably stay with you guys as well. Um, Next is virtual stuff. So basically your digital, you know, your digital footprint, right? So my accounts or things like that. I would probably um I want to get a comprehensive list of all of the information and stuff to be able to access them and then provide it with either you guys or um my partners or my partner or whoever. Uh, but for the most part I would probably just leave them uh as they were whenever I passed. Uh, Maybe one post that said that I did pass or what have you, but I wouldn't make it a continual thing. Um, and that kind of goes further on in this next one about social. Um, I would probably, spend some of my last, moments and stuff, um, calling folks, telling them what's going on and what have you. But I wouldn't, unless you guys were interested in doing that, I wouldn't want to have like accounts or things serve as memorials. They would probably just stay as they were. Um, as for information, giving out information and stuff like that, I know, you've helped out with a lot of stuff, but I also don't want to burden you with that role. So as uh I guess it would be undertaken either by our immediate family if I'm not married, or taken over by a spouse if I am married, and then just being able to undergo the challenges or the other duties as they come up and as people are available to take them. I would want it to be, a general thing where everybody's involved and everyone's doing stuff. But I know obviously people are going to be going through different spells and stuff. So um, I just want everyone to be involved in doing the duty of getting it resolved. Uh, so yeah. But, it's still flexible enough to where people can take time if they need time during that. And then finally, yeah, emotional preparedness. Um, I would hope that you'd be able to talk with my friends or who have you, um, to help you go through this, right? To know me or remember me and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I would want you guys to be able to have the resources to go and be able to do this. Okay, one thing real quick. So our meeting is about to end, because there's a limit on Zoom. but I'll send you another link and then we can continue.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and close it out now and I'll start another one.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So now that we've gone through, the main those seven sections talking about all those different things, was there anything that kind of came to mind as I was talking about them, about I guess some of the logistical things, um, values, anything that you disagreed with, anything like that?
Um, the only thing is I would say differently is the hospice situation.
Hmm.
Um, I feel that at the point of death, I feel that, in my personal opinion, I would want to, even though I know it would be hard for family members and not to put burden on family members to take care of me, maybe hire, like, if possible, a financial situation to hire like a hospice nurse to be available to
Hmm.
handle the burdenal parts. Not to say burdenal, but you know what I mean, the difficult areas. But I would like to be surrounded by family as much as possible, loved ones, because I feel that when you're sick, I feel loneliness is a very tough thing. And I feel that, not loneliness as far as, oh, I just want somebody around me, but feeling that love of family and closeness of family at that time is important, to know that even though you're leaving this earth, you're leaving this life, you're still leaving with love and care from your family. And I think it makes the transition from life to death a little easier, because even though you know you're dying and you're not going to be with those family members or loved ones anymore, you still you leave this earth and transition to life after death into a different realm than just being by yourself or being with people that don't know you, that don't love you in a sense that a family member or a loved one would do.
Hmm.
I I feel that it's very important to leave this life feeling that love and warmth, even though the situation may be difficult. And yes, you're going to need care. And no, I don't feel the burden should be put onto those family members, to see you suffer or see you go through that change, as a nurse or an attendant or something can help you with that. And so that while yes, you're being taken care of, you're able to spend those moments, even though they may not be the best moments, you can still fill those moments with love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Maybe part of the reason why
I
I
understand your point,
uh
but maybe if it's available that you could hire someone to take care of
mhm.
someone, or through an organization, that you can get that assistance that's needed, but also still feel that love and comfort of a family member.
Yeah. I think maybe it it's not entirely just for, the rest of the family. It's also partially for me, I guess. Like that I would, like whenever you're in the hospital or something like that, like it's kind of its own little world, right? And you're only thinking about things like in your immediate area. Whereas if you're at home, I guess like you're usually it's life as normal, right? Like I mean, like I think that you would still be thinking about planning and doing all this, like all the way up into the end. And I don't know, I guess just having that new space, having like a different space than being at home normally, is helpful in a way because it brings a sense of differentness to it, and that I think is helpful too. You can kind of really be able to sit and focus on certain things instead of maybe being, I don't want to say distracted, but maybe in a way kind of distracted by like the area that you're already familiar with. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So, but I do agree. I do agree with you that there are kind of trade-offs in that way. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I might still go with the hospice for now, but there are more trade-offs than is immediately noticeable. That's something to consider. All right. So this is the last one. This is section four, and this is just a general personal checklist. This was specifically designed for people who um, are facing end of life options, right? So they can actively choose options for end of life. And in that case, UCLA provided a checklist of just general things that you can think about before that is acted out. And so we can just kind of go over some of them, and I'll talk a little bit over some key ones, not all of them, but some key ones um, throughout here. And then yeah, that'll pretty much be it. So there are four kind of main sections throughout here, and I'll start off with the first one, which is personal communication. One of the first one is, discussing your condition. And like I said earlier, I would want you guys to know everything. I would want to know everything, and I would want you guys to know everything also. Just because, I haven't thought of many possibilities where, you know, limiting the amount of information is very helpful. Um, especially with grown-ups and everything like that. Um, exactly what medical interventions that I want. Obviously, I haven't talked with you guys about it at length. But uh, kind of like what we already talked about earlier, like things like machines and stuff like that, I'm okay with. But if things are starting to get more terminal, then it would be a prioritization of, comfort and stuff like that up until things are starting to go down pretty rapidly. Um, my healthcare proxy or surrogate medical decision. This one is really important, and this one is you and dad, and uh, I think it's currently just you and dad. Um, and once I get married and I've been like with a person for a good while, then I would probably change it, right? But just for the meantime, probably you guys. But one thing I would say is that obviously, say I'm in like a coma or something, say I'm in a coma where say I have no individual brain activity or things like that, right? Like where if it's a vegetative state, right? And there's very, very little, if any, opportunity for me to come back to my normal self, I would guess. I'm okay because I know that's a really big decision, right, for you guys to have to face. And I'm okay if you guys need time to make that decision, right? So if you need a couple or a few weeks, or even a month, I mean, I'm not, conscious, so it wouldn't really be something that I would be experiencing, I guess. So if you guys need time to make any, really difficult decisions, you guys have it, right? So I don't want you guys to feel like um, decisions have to be made immediately. If you need time to really deliberate and see what you think I would want, uh, and what's in my best interest, then you guys can take that time. Uh, okay. Um, Personal considerations. So things, religious beliefs about death. I don't think that I have any really considerations, or I guess like practical considerations that I need to make about death. Um, we'll talk a little bit more about maybe religious. ceremonies or stuff like that. But um, I don't think I really need to. I can't think of that I would need like consultation or anything at like right now to talk about. Furthermore, with like psychological or spiritual counseling, I don't think I really would need it at the time. Maybe if I just say a so at the time of death or at the time of hospitalization, maybe. But for the meantime, I think I'm okay. Um, what else? Have I created my bucket list? I don't really have much of a bucket list, honestly. I'm pretty okay with, whatever. If I get a terminal, diagnosis or what have you, I wouldn't be out doing a bunch of things before I have to be, hospitalized or what have you. I'm kind of just, chilling, going, driving or going on fishing trips or something like that. Like something, if I do go do anything, it would be something pretty small and pretty, easy. So, um, I don't really have much of like a very extensive bucket list. And honestly, if I don't get to do them, even if they are those small things, that's okay. It's not too big of not too big of a deal. Um, we talked a little bit earlier about personal belongings, and they would probably, transfer to uh, my family or my spouse as applicable. Likewise with special items. Now this is one thing. Um, if I have children, uh, say on or no, I guess we already did talk about this. Sorry. What should I sell before my death? Honestly, I would in the same vein as giving out property. It would probably go to you guys, and if you guys want to sell certain things, unless I've made like a very clear distinction that I don't want that thing sold. Um, but I haven't, made very many of those distinctions, at least not yet. Um, but for the most part, if you guys, need to sell things, then that's okay. I know, we know more than we know quite extensively that money is, needed sometimes, and there's nothing that I'm particularly um close to. So I'm okay if you guys need to sell stuff. Unfinished projects, those are things that, I mean, honestly, if I do get a terminal diagnosis, then I may not be able to do very much anyway. Maybe just like minor community work and stuff like that. But for the most part, I don't really have any major things that need to be considered during my process. If I do have, children or just in general family members and stuff, I would probably want to spend a little bit of time leaving letters or videos for them to have later on. And, I wasn't able to complete them within the time frame for this project, but I will eventually work on them and have them, available and updated over the years. But that is something that I would want to do. Also about, digital photos and videos or passwords. I would ultimately, again, I haven't been able to complete it for this, but I would want to find some time to compile all of those so that you guys have access to all of them. For personal reflection and communication about the dying process. So who would I want to be present? I would want, you guys, my immediate family, dad, you and Ariana to be present. And my immediate friends. So maybe Matthew and Gerardo, and maybe some members of our extended family, like Uncle Brian or Aunt Teresa, Mama and Papa, or Connor. Um, maybe some members like that. Um, and as for what kind of atmosphere I would want, just general, just calm. This is assuming that it would be um that everyone, knows and that's going to happen this specific day, this specific time, or what have you. That may not necessarily be the circumstance that I find myself in, but if it is, then, I would just want to choose, something calm, something accessible to different people, just kind of serene, you know, not necessarily somber, but just calm, so that people can go through it at their own stage. Um, if I do have a pet at the time, like if I have Buddy or if I have another pet, I would want them to be there um after I pass, just so that they know, what happened to me. That sometimes um pets don't really understand unless they see like the body present. And so I would want, Buddy or whatever other pet I have at the time to be there. But yeah, that's kind of it. Um, Maybe some flowers, just like a general spread of flowers and like a nice candle, like a cinnamon apple candle or something. Something like that, something nice. Um, a particular poem or prayer. I think maybe like a group prayer, just an impromptu one would be fine. Nothing particularly like ceremonial. Nothing, just something impromptu, I guess. And yeah, other than that, I guess I would just want the day kind of to be, if I'm mentally there, I get to engage with you guys and talk with you guys and stuff like that. But maybe if I'm not there, then it's just a day for you guys to kind of be there and maybe talk a little bit about me and talk about the things that are going on in your lives, not just mine. Um, yeah, and I would just kind of want it to be like a nice kind of peaceful day and stuff. So I wouldn't, obviously people are going through their different griefs and different processes and stuff. But um so like I wouldn't kick anybody out if they were crying or something. But I would just want it to be kind of a calm thing. All right. And then finally the funeral. Where would I want my body to be taken? I don't have a particular funeral home chosen. I know that there's the one in East Texas, but that's kind of far from here. And again, if I'm planning on doing donations or having a more, I guess, natural kind of burial, then I probably wouldn't want like a formal funeral home kind of situation. Um, that goes further on into the idea of like, how do I want my body handled after death? Do I want it to be embalmed or buried or cremated? Um, yeah, I would assume, hopefully, if possible, if I'm doing, whole body donation for, I guess, uh, organ harvesting, then hopefully just the hospital kind of takes it, and you guys, wouldn't have to have the logistical burden of figuring that part out. I know, of course, you guys may have preferences about being able to visit a specific place or something and know that I guess some part of my remains are there. But yeah. I guess I can ask your opinion on that. Um Subsequently my burial or casket preferences. Um Again, I don't want it to be very expensive, and this is the part where things get expensive. So, I remember I talked with you a couple of times that if I do just have my body, if the donation thing isn't happening, then however it's possible to work out, just like a simple burial, right? Like a ground burial with linen sheets or something, or a cardboard um, casket, something like that. Um, who do I want notified of my death? Obviously, of course, you guys and my immediate family, and then I'll have a list. I don't have it quite listed out right here, right now, but my immediate family and friends, and then some of our extended family. And then I would want to write my own obituary. I haven't yet written it out either, but I would write it out, and then um, you guys, my immediate family, and then my immediate friends, and then a couple of our extended family would read different sections of it at a ceremony, at a celebration of life ceremony. Um, do I want a headstone or grave marker? if you guys think that you would, this is also another part where things get expensive, right? And so I would just want it to be kind of simple, right? Like if it's a tree, you know that that's Joshua's tree or something, right?
Mhm.
So things like that. Yeah, so delivery of the eulogy. Again, I would prefer, I hope that I'd be able to account for all of the costs, and hopefully it's somewhat minimal costs of the ceremony. Um, I do know, for the most part, uh, the ceremony is also something for you guys, right? Like it's not just for me, it's for you guys to be able to go through the process of grief, right? So if you guys feel like you would be um benefited from like the beauty of flowers being gifted, right, or present, then by all means, go ahead. Like I would uh ask that, people would possibly like bring flowers to the funeral or the celebration of life ceremony. Um, but if you guys are okay without it, then maybe just identifying a local, food or clothing bank and then giving like maybe 15, $20 each there, then that's, totally fine by me, right? Because I also would probably want the celebration of life hosted at like a park or something like that, where there's already plenty of natural beauty. So um, y'all can have it that way. But yeah, and then who needs to be made aware of my death? Again, I'll make a list soon and have a comprehensive list. But yeah, so those were kind of the main four sections. And that was the last of the main three sections. So, was there anything during that section that rang out to you?
No, again, I'm in agreement with everything pretty much that you said. So
Okay.
I really can't think of anything differently.
Hmm. All right, cool. All right, cool. All right, well, those were the main three sections. Thanks for giving me some of your time to go over. I know this is kind of a hard conversation. Um, but I hope that, it's like a difficult thing to talk about, but it also once you talk about it a little bit more, it's not quite as rough, I guess, you
I
can
don't
see
think
like
it ever becomes easier.
I think it doesn't become easier, but it becomes like you can see how there are nice parts of it too. Like you can see my choices and stuff, and you'd be like, oh, that was a nice choice, or that was something that like is representative of him, right? And I think, those don't make it easier, but it kind of brings like a bittersweet kind of thing to it. I
Yes.
guess. I guess. Okay. Well, all right. Well, that was kind of most of the
Kind of,
interview.
I guess is like I said, it's a very difficult time for me at this point,
Yeah.
given my recent situations as well as what's currently going on with my own parent.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, hopefully, this won't be anytime soon, right?
I would hope not.
Neither for me or for most anybody either of us know. Um, but yeah, well, thanks for your time. I can go ahead and end the recording and then we can talk a little bit afterwards. But yeah, was there any final words or anything before we close out?
Good
Okay,
luck.
thank you.
Hmm.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Okay, Zoom cut us out for a little bit, but now we're back. We
All
were
right.
we were talking about general themes and stuff throughout the project. You were saying something?
Um, I think I left off on just that last part. It was more so just the fact of me saying that you're pretty much just covering all bases at that point. And even though, you're nowhere near the end of your life yet, you know, it's
Hopefully,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you pretty much have it all covered. Like, and it makes me think about, what I should be doing as well. So it's just one of those things, I guess, where like it wakes you up a little bit in a way. But like you were saying, you pretty much got everything covered from A to B. Like it's it seems like a pretty simple topic, but then again, when you really think about it, it's pretty heavy because I mean, like you said, from just simply going to the ER first or the urgent care first, you have to go to a certain hospital that you want to go to, and then eventually going to hospice. You've pretty much broken it down to every step. And a lot of people, I don't think they actually think about it that way. So it's kind of refreshing in a way. So it's made me definitely think about what I would want to do.
Yeah.
And even though
Well,
we're both young and not even close to the end of our lives yet,
mm,
it does make me think about what I would want to do too.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool as a project just because, of course, it's getting something practical out of the way, right? Like it's getting some planning out of the way, but it also kind of makes you think about what you want in your life, right? Like what you want. I know. A couple of weeks ago, our discussion post back then was asking like, "What do you want?" If you had 6 months left, and
Hmm.
that kind of got me thinking about more than just the logistical stuff of it. Like, what do I actually want from life? And I think I think I've been really fortunate to be in a class like this that offers the practical resources to get things set up, but it also kind of gets you thinking about what do you want in general. And that's something that I've gotten that's really cool from this class.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for all your time. Any I guess final thoughts on anything? Not I guess not only from this assignment, but from the semester as a whole. I know I got to speak with you a whole lot about this class this semester.
Yeah, there's nothing general like I really pinpoint throughout the whole thing. I think all of it was it was a unique experience, definitely being able to have this experience for you to interview me and everything like that, and me being able to give you answers and stuff. Like I said before, it's like it's opened up a part of my mind that I really didn't think that I really would be thinking about until like I was 65 or something or 55.
Mhm.
So it's pretty cool to at least give it a little bit of thought now, like when I'm driving on the way to work or coming home from work, and sitting in traffic,
Mhm.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I also wanted to just say thank you for this opportunity.
Shoot, man, you helped me out more than you can know with with working on these. So,
Yeah, man,
all
of
right,
course.
man. Well, bye. I'm never gonna talk to you again.
All right, well,
Um,
this is it.
this is it. This is the end of the road. All right. Oh, well, at least the end of the recording. So, thanks so much for hanging out with me and talking with me about this stuff, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, bro, of course.
Okay. All right. This is Joshua Gonzalez. I'm here joined by my friend Matthew Lambert, and we're here for the last part of Sociology 408, looking at the preparing for your death portfolio. Basically,
Damn.
yeah. Um, Today we'll be going over it's sections 1, 2, and 4 of the assignment proper, but basically um, going over advanced directives and then personal preferences and a checklist for things over the process, and then the themes that are kind of reflected and the themes and the values that are kind of reflected for that. And at the end of each one, I'll talk with Matthew, see how he thinks about them, if he agrees with them, disagrees with them, and what have you. So, all right, let me go ahead and screen share. My apologies. Okay. Let me see something. There we go. All right. So this is our advanced directive, and this is kind of a collection of a bunch of different documents. But the first thing that we look at is the values worksheet. And this is asking, what you prioritize whenever you're going into a healthcare, situation, right? And for me, the way to kind of sum up all of this stuff is basically the idea that I'm okay with, uncomfort or discomfort and being treated. But if it's something terminal, right? Like if it's something that cannot really be reversed, then I want to prioritize comfort, uh, initial comfort, and then as things start to kind of rapidly decay, then let nature take its course kind of naturally. And I think that that's reflected in a lot of things, avoiding expensive care, um, being free of physical limitations, um, being independent, preserving quality of life, and then most specifically, not living as long as possible, regardless of quality of life. Um, so to kind of expand upon these, we have some questions here. What is important to me whenever if say I am going in a dying process? Um, I kind of, as things are reasonably available, to be, comfortable, to not have pain, um, and to have family members and friends present. That last part is, reasonable availability. It's a difficult thing to go through. If it's, financial or logistical or emotional, um, I'd like for people to be involved, but sometimes it's, really difficult or it's not possible. And I wouldn't want to, put a overdue burden um, on, friends and family like that. So if they're
Right.
available, then they can go. But I wouldn't like want to make a demand or something. When you're looking at situations in the second question, like terminal illnesses, or if you're in a permanent coma, or even if you have dementia, basically situations where it looks like you're going through either a physical or a mental rapid decline, and it doesn't really show much promise of going backwards. Um, for me, kind of the idea is like if I can't go backwards and if I'm going to just rapidly decline, then let nature take its course, right? Um, as for, using life-sustaining measures and stuff like that, you know, I kind of leave it up to the discretion of the medical professionals and my family, especially if I'm not like mentally there. Because if they think that there's a likelihood that I might be, back to my regular self, I guess, then I'm okay with initial discomfort, right? Even if it's kind of prolonged. But if it really doesn't look like there's a chance to go back, then I don't really want to, prolong it. Um,
Right.
and that's kind of further reflected in this next question. Strong feelings about medical procedures. None really. Even though all of these are pretty uncomfortable, as long as they lead to, the possibility of recovery, then I'm okay with it. Um, but limitations of my physical or my mental health that would change some of these previous decisions physically, maybe it's something like quadriplegia, right? Like if I become basically like a vegetative state, that might be something moving around and being able to talk and things like that are really important to me. And I don't think it would, necessarily prompt me to say, withhold food and water, like immediate action, but I probably would be less inclined to support sustaining measures. That's physical, but in the same vein, mental is cognitive capability or losing your long and short term memory. Ultimately, like a similar status of vegetation, and that's something that I don't really want to go towards.
Hmm.
Um, Whether or not I'd want to be placed in a nursing home or facility, I think we talked a little bit about this earlier on in the semester, but I would if it presented like a logistical strain on my family, right? I was talking about this with my mom, and she was kind of saying, well, even if there is somewhat of a strain, like I would still want to be there, right? And I think, I feel that same way too. But I mentioned here, if it's three or more of the following activities, feeding, bathing, or toileting or dressing myself that I can't do, it's getting closer to the state where I need like near constant supervision. And like initially that would be fine with my family, but it would kind of drain them pretty fast. So
Right.
that, yeah, that would be a situation where I'd want to, go to hospice care, which gets us into the next question. Would you prefer hospice as an alternative to hospitalization in the last part of your life? This I would definitely want to do, especially as opposed to hospitalization. If it's financially available, I think it's maybe less of a strain on my family. Um, but also particularly, as opposed to hospitalization, I just think that hospice is more comfortable, more, you know, I guess palatable.
Right.
You Um, and then, number seven, I want to be as present as possible during the process. The only thing is that I know that sometimes logistically it's not necessarily available. So, if a doctor says like, oh, we got to do a certain procedure right now, right? Or if it's just like something regular like CPR or intubation or things like that, then that's okay. And I give them full discretion to make those choices. Um, but ultimately, I don't want to be, if it looks like there's even a chance of returning back to normal, then I'm okay with an uncomfortable decision, right? Um, but if it looks like there's definitely not going to be like a return to form there, I wouldn't want to continue making, decisions that lead to uncomfort.
Right.
So yeah, knowing the truth about my condition, pretty much on like unequivocally, like yeah, I would want to know the entire truth. I would want to know the entire truth and also be able to tell, friends or family, uh, my condition, just because I don't think that there's usually a lot of benefits to withholding it. I mean, it's pretty difficult information to take in, right? Especially if you're close friends or family. But I it's something that I don't feel that I should withhold from people, because they need that probably to be able to move on, or to understand the gravity of it. All right, so I'll keep going through some of the remaining documents and then we'll do a quick little aside before we move on to the next one. Um, my wishes for therapies that could sustain my life. Again, this is kind of reflective. You can see like everything is pretty check marked because I'm okay with, uncomfortable stuff. Um, just so long as there's the possibility of uh, recovery, right? um, Now whenever we start to talk about chances of non-recovery, we can talk about this dementia provision. So I can just go one by one through them. If I've kind of lost my memory but I still am here present in the moment, then yeah, I still think that that's like a good moment. Still a good form of life. um, But as you start to gradually not, know the people around you, and you start to be anxious or irritable or even violent, um, that's kind of a situation where I feel like I'm mentally lost and I'm also scared, right? And that wouldn't be a position that I would want to be in, right?
Mhm.
If I'm, maybe mentally lost, but if I'm, okay where I'm at the moment, then that's fine. Um, because, even though of course I wish I had, mental clarity to remember everything, um, I still do think that there's some value in that form of life, being there in the moment. But if I'm unhappy, if I'm sad or anxious, if I'm not really able to control it with medicine, and particularly if I'm getting violent, then I probably wouldn't, want to have many sustaining treatments, particularly if I'm violent, if I'm violent and I'm not able to be controlled with medication. That's actually the only circumstance throughout this whole piece that I would prefer refusal of food and drink, which means like a pretty like rapid, um, I guess death, subsequent death, right? Just
Right.
because I feel like I wouldn't be there anymore, and I'd always be irritable, and I'd kind of be a danger to others. So that's the one circumstance that I would want things to kind of progress pretty fast. But other than that, for the most part, I, as long as I'm, even if I'm losing memory, as long as I'm still okay in the present, then that's fine. One thing about that I kind of mentioned earlier about how being able to move around and express myself is really important to me. Obviously, like any single one of these things, whether or not I'm able to no longer feed myself, bathe myself, toilet myself, dress myself, those things in isolation, um, are, not things that I would say like pull the plug right now.
Right.
Right? But if they start to kind of two of those things or three of those things or all of those things are happening, then it's getting closer towards that vegetative state, which is not really something that I want. And if we're, getting to where all of those things are adding up, um, it may be another one of those refusal of food and drink. Um, but other than that, for the most part, one thing here option is a nursing home. Again, that's kind of a broad thing though, because I can still be mentally present and logistically only being in a nursing home, and that's fine. Um, One thing is I'm unable to leave my bed. Again, like I prefer to be able to move around and stuff. So
Right.
this isn't something quite as drastic as if I'm, mentally like irritable and violent all the time, but it is kind of one step away from it. So things kind of, I guess, along that vein. Um, I included my mom as my healthcare proxy so she can make decisions for me, and then my sister as an alternative to my mom. Um, this is some of these are just medical letters and things like that to be able to express these wishes to my doctors or what have you, and like my preferred uh, medical placement, like the kind of facility that I would prefer to go to, like
Right.
urgent care first, um, and then a specific hospital that I know I really like, and then if ultimately it's time for hospice, then a hospice. And yeah, hospital visitation authorization. Basically, just the people who would first be able to access me or learn about my information and stuff if I'm hospitalized would be, members of my immediate family. But yeah, what do you think about those? I guess not only, in your stance as my friend, but also whether or not you agree with them, disagree with them, what have you.
Um,
What do you think?
I think they're pretty rational decisions. I mean, it seems like you've taken a lot of time to think about them, and you know, really not only think of yourself but your family members too. So I think you've pretty much, for the future, you've did the right thing. If you could say it like that.
Hmm. Well, thank you.
No. But yeah, I think, like I said before, I think you've done the right thing with these decisions. I mean, they seem pretty rational.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay, so I can go. This is our second section, and it has seven subsections. And we'll go through them, and these kind of have some similarities with our last section.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, these are just kind of like a list of prompts that kind of ask about your preferences, the logistics, and things like that.
Okay.
So section one, the good death, right? It's basically kind of talking about what would you prefer? What do you think is a good sequence of events or policy that I guess leads to good well-being, I guess in your last stage, right? That your values are good and represented. First question is, do you want to enter a hospice home? And I think for the most part I would. I was talking with my mom and she kind of was again saying that, you might miss out on your family and you may only kind of have those artificial connections with the people that are there. And I think that um I think there's merit in that, but I also think that a good advantage of, something like a hospice situation is I think it's actually kind of helpful that you're not at home necessarily. You have a different environment to be able to work within, right? And if you're at home, maybe you're kind of just thinking about the same things as if you were, not in this critical condition. Um, but for me, I feel like if I'm staying at a hospice place, right, I'm able to kind of focus on I guess the right thing, or I'm able to focus on uh the end of my life and how to enjoy it at the end, right?
Right.
So, and there's also, initially I had considered it as a logistical thing, um, not, overburdening my family too much, but I kind of go both ways now. That, it's a logistical thing, but it's also a personal kind of reflection thing. But I do think my mom has a good point in that, you do kind of lose out on some of that familial connection.
Hmm.
It also talks a little bit about uh, having items with you. Honestly, kind of okay. I probably wouldn't bring too many items from my personal co collection or things, I guess, Um, kind of a pretty simple guy, so I'm just kind of chilling out. I'm kind of just, using that time for reflection, really.
Right.
Maybe I'll bring the PS5. I'll play it, be on the game for the
I was
last
gonna
few.
say you're probably gonna bring your record player and like PS5 and your phone, and you'd be content.
That the record player ain't a bad idea, man. Spend the last few months building out that collection. Um, okay, cool. So this is the next one talking about body disposal. And I was telling my mom that, once I learned about the opportunity from this class, I kind of want to do donation, especially if I, pass away young for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of want to give, what I have to someone who needs it, right? Um, I think certain denominations of Christianity, which I'm a Christian, uh, may have different rules or traditions about, you know, body disposal. But at least for me, non-denominational, but in general, it's kind of just a priority of, scripture, which doesn't give a certain like definite practice about it. That's why I feel, free to be able to dispose of my body as through a form of donation. So I don't have really many religious withholdings on that. I just kind of prefer to have it as a donation, so that other folks can benefit. But
Right.
but if that's not at all possible, then I would kind of just prefer like a very cheap, very low key kind of just burial. Maybe something on a underneath a tree, like as simple as that, like the old like cowboy or something,
The old cowboy way. Yeah.
like
Very, very majestic and very peaceful.
like linen sheets or just something like that, like just wrapped up or a cardboard box, like I mean, it's not the most glamorous thing, but I'm not a big fan of the idea of like preservation or anything like that, like dust to dust kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so this next section talking about finances and possessions. So I don't have a current living will or a current trust, um, but the executor of my estate would be my parents, at least currently. If I, get married and if I'm with that person for a good while and I feel, strong in our relationship, then I would want that person to be, my executor. But as for now, it would probably be my parents. And that goes for a lot of these things in these next couple of questions. Who cleans out my home, my personal possessions, and things like that. Even if things, some of them can be quite embarrassing.
Yeah.
Um, I would still have it be my parents. I think that they kind of they have they have access to everything about me, even if it's kind of some not always great stuff. But
Yeah.
um, but one thing about that I do want to say though is that they're going to be going through a lot at the time, whether or not it's my parents or even if it is my partner. Um, they don't have to do it immediately. They can take as much time as they want. Like if I'm still living in the RV for some reason, right? They don't have to come up here till 2 or 3 months after I pass, right?
Yeah.
Let the place collect dust for a little while if you need the time to, you know, accept it and be able to move on. Um, or at least be able to, approach it. But yeah, I would want to give, but the general idea is just to be able to give them the time to go through it. And I don't, obviously there are things that I would prefer that some people don't see, but I wouldn't take it to the extent of saying that, oh, you can't see it, you know. Um, if I do have any dependents or children or in the same vein pets, then yeah, they would go to either to the spouse or to my parents. Um, Maybe the only consideration there is if there's suddenly like some particular uh estranged thing going on, or if it's with a spouse, if there's, a separation or an abuse or what have you. That I gotta be honest, that's not something I've been able to discern quite yet. Um, but in the meantime, assuming that, things are good for the most part, it would either go to my parents or my spouse, depending on my marital status or what have you. This next one is about is the virtual world, right? And this kind of goes into this is section 4, but it kind of bleeds into section 5 and 6 for a good bit. Um, Talking about like your virtual identity, right? Your social media, your social media, how it's handled, how you make, contact with people on your last days or afterwards. Um, Having access to your important information for affairs and things like that. And yeah, yeah, those general things, having access to them, choosing what to do with them, and having all of the, important information. Um, I would want to make it, as simple as possible, as easy as possible to be able to access everything. But I would kind of hope that they would just be left as is, right? I mean, you could say maybe like one post for each platform that, hey, this person did pass away, but I wouldn't want it to maybe I wouldn't personally want it to be I don't have a personal desire for it to be like a memorial. But
Well,
if my family feels like they would appreciate being able to use it as a memorial, then it's up to them. I wouldn't want to take away that opportunity from them. So, yeah. And on that last note, information dispersal, just having easy access to information to be able to manage affairs. It's something that I've been trying to do to get everything, easily accessible. It's going to take some time, obviously, making a million different accounts in the internet sphere throughout your life. But yeah, I do want to make some sort of comprehensive thing to where, whether it's my personal assets or it's my internet stuff or whatever it is, that whoever is accessing it after my death can find it as easy as possible to navigate. And then in that same vein, our last sub question for this section is emotional preparedness. Um, how how do I want my family and my loved ones to be supported during the time? I just want it to be as easy as possible on them, and whether or not whether or not that's doing it through setting up, logistical means or getting them together, with counselors or groups or what have you, or um, talking with them before I go away, fixing any grievances or what have you. That's something that I really want to put a lot of effort into, and leaving a, a clean, I guess, canvas for them to kind of be able to go through that on, go through their grief and deal with it. So yeah, um, this is the last question here. Reflecting on your own life, what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishments and proudest moments? Honestly, just getting to spend time with my family, getting to spend time with friends and stuff like that. Because while work is great, you get to do some great stuff sometimes. It is kind of important. I think I think it's kind of most important to be able to spend time with family, and I want that to be reflected in my last moments, and getting things prepared for them afterwards. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the whole second section. I know there was a lot of information there, but how do you feel about maybe some of the general ideas that were put up in there? Anything you agree with, disagree with?
Not that I necessarily disagree with anything, but I would definitely the readiness aspect of it would probably be a huge burden on me. But um, just from what you said, I feel a little bit better about the way that I would go about it now. As in, I would probably take the same route you would. So, I mean, like I said before, you're pretty rational about your decisions and everything. You pretty much consider not only yourself but everybody around you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right, well, this is the last section. Let me go ahead and get there. And again, this is the preparing for your own death personal checklist. It's from UCLA. Um this is gonna have a lot of similarities between this last section that we just did. But yeah, this one specifically was made for people who were choosing end of life, going through it actively. Uh but it can be, applicable here as well. And there's four sections talking about, personal communications and considerations, um, reflection, and then, the actual memorial or ceremonies afterwards. And we can just kind of pick out some of the main, ideas in here. Starting off with the first one, how I discuss my condition. Again, I would want, to not, withhold any information during the time, right? So that
Yeah.
everyone has, a clear understanding of what things are going on, what can be expected. I think maybe if I dig into it a little bit further, I could probably find a reason or two to why there might be, a good instance of withholding stuff. But for the most part, I can't think of anything right at the moment. And I think it would probably be better for everyone if, they have access to that. Um, for going on about that, access to medical informa interventions and um, what my healthcare proxy would know what to do. Thanks to this assignment, I've been able to express that with my parents and with my sister, and they would have that. So that's pretty good. My personal considerations, religious or counseling wise, I don't really have too many to, brush up on, I guess. Um, as for, fixing uh, personal relationships or things, I think maybe there are some people that I'd like to talk to, um, family members or what have you. For the most part, things are pretty fine though. Um, do I have any letters to write, calls to make? I would like to, write letters and make some personal calls before, that I can do personally before I go. And this will, come up later in another question talking about, leaving videos and things like that behind. Um, but yeah, I would want to leave some sort of letter or video or things like that for people to turn back to later on. My bucket list, I talked with you a little bit about this earlier this semester. And again, my bucket list isn't very extensive. and what is there is very minimal. And even if I don't get to do that, that's fine. That's okay. Um, my personal belongings, so this is in the same vein as the finance and things like that. It would go to it would go to my family, it would go to my spouse. As applicable, it's all the same with, special items and things like that. Um, Dependent on the situation, but also the same with, children and pets, things like that. Unfinished projects. I mean, honestly, um, I might spend some of my remaining time working on that a little bit, but I would probably just, go ahead and drop it for them. I mean, it depends on what it is, right? But
Yeah.
I would probably, be willing to drop stuff to spend time with family. Um, about, the actual passing itself, I would want, my immediate family, my friends, you and Gerardo, um, to be present, and some extended family. Um, I would just want it to be kind of a calm, not necessarily like somber, somber thing, but just like a calm, serene kind of thing. Um, Maybe I would want, whatever pet I currently have to be there also. Um, I wouldn't necessarily prefer either silence or music, just whatever, comes about from people naturally being there. Um, As for a prayer read, I mean, I probably wouldn't choose like a specific prayer, but I would just an impromptu group prayer might be nice.
Right.
And um, and whether or not I'd want loved ones to reminisce or just carry on. I mean, if I'm mentally cognizant, right? If I'm mentally there, I would want for them to I maybe talk with them a little bit about my life, but um, it's not. It's also not entirely about me, right? Hopefully, I'll have grandchildren, right? Maybe they'll be going to college or they'll be going into a career or they're still in school, right? Um, I'm not particularly unique, right? I won't have any more stories than the next person or what have you. But if they want to know what life was like whenever I was going to college, what lessons I had and things like that, then I can talk to them about it. Or if they just want to talk about the things that are going on in their lives, that's totally fine too. So, yeah, what else? Oh yeah, photos, special objects. I would like flowers, maybe a nice candle, like cinnamon apple candle or something, right? Um, yeah, I know it's kind of girly, but
At least it
just
sounds
something,
good, right?
yeah, but something pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then yeah, finally the funeral, right? I mean, I think I would probably want something more along the lines of a celebration of life, right? Um, whether or not I've been donated or I've been buried quite simply. Um, one of my main hopes is that it's not going to be ultimately very expensive, right? I want it to not be a big financial burden to my family, and I want it to be um, not a somber thing. I want it to be something that people can obviously feel their own emotions about, but be, not kind of forced into unhappiness, right? By ritual or the traditions.
Right.
Um, I think maybe the last thing I'd like to talk about is the eulogy, right? So I think I do maybe want to write my own eulogy, um, but maybe invite people who speak it um, to include their own elements. But I would like personally for, my immediate family, my dad, my mom, my sister, to read part of it, but also some of my friends and a couple of members of my extended family. So maybe you, maybe you
Right.
and Gerardo um, would be able to read out a section that I wrote up or include your own ideas, and then some members of my extended family. But all of that to end up just with a ceremony that's relatively happy, not too burdened or what have you. So, all right, sorry, we have less than a minute, but what are some of your thoughts? I guess not only about this one, but about what we talked about in general today.
Just first off, just you know, let me know ahead of time so I can get with my manager on taking a
Yeah,
day.
when I die. Yeah.
Um, no, but all jokes aside, I mean, like you're pretty. It seems like you've thought about this a lot, and not only just the fact of just because of class and doing these assignments and everything, but it seems like you've pretty much thought this out enough to a point where like you can like I said before, not to sound like a broken record, but not only have yourself feel comfortable or at peace with